I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading from the book of Job, chapter 8. Let's focus on verses 1 through 7. Then Bildad, the Shuhite, answered and said, "How long will you speak these things, and the words of your mouth be like a strong wind? Does God subvert judgment? Or does the Almighty pervert justice? If your sons have sinned against him, he has cast them away for their transgression. If you would earnestly seek God and make your supplication to the Almighty, if you were pure and upright, surely now he would awake for you and prosper your rightful dwelling place. Though your beginning was small, yet your latter end would increase abundantly." Now, several years ago, I received a phone call from a friend who was considering placing his mother in an asylum. "Her dementia has become too much to handle," he explained. Well, his mom's symptoms were textbook dementia, borderline Alzheimer's. For instance, she would wear 2 or sometimes 3 outfits on top of each other. That's not normal. She would insist that she had doctor appointments in the middle of the night. And, she'd even called the police because she was just convinced that family members were trying to kill her and steal her money. While only in her mid-70s, this woman displayed behavior that was uncommon until a person is in their late 80s. There was only one problem. She didn't have dementia. She merely had a urinary tract infection. Thank the Lord that one doctor suggested an antibiotic instead of an institution, because within a few days of antibiotics, she was back to normal. She had no memory of any of those erratic antics. Here's my point. When the diagnosis is wrong, the treatment and the expectations for healing are wrong. And sometimes all that wrong has devastating consequences. This was the case with Job's friends. Each was convinced that God was judging Job for some secret sin. And their belief that their misdiagnosis was correct diagnosis was so deeply held that they became indignant whenever Job defended his character. Laying aside Job's testimony about himself, let's consider God's testimony about Job's character. Job chapter 1, verse 8. Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a blameless and an upright man who fears God and shuns evil?" Have you ever been wrongly judged? I have. Between the years 2008 and 2010, there was a massive financial downturn in our nation. If you were in the construction industry, you know. 1 in 4 homes in Southern California were in danger of foreclosing. That's a quarter of the real estate market. Millions of people. And I know because I lost my home in that downturn. And so there I was, a minister of the gospel, who had left Middle America to follow God's call to Southern California, which is a lot more expensive than where I came from. And I firmly believe that whenever God guides, He provides. And so it was a major blow to my faith paradigm when we lost our home. And in that season, I had a serious decision to make. Was I going to curse God and die, as Job's wife recommended? By the way, those two needed marriage counseling. Was I going to curse God and die, or was I going to hold on to God's word, as Job said that he would? Hey, even if this goes south, I'm still going to declare the truth of God's word. I'm still going to exalt the Lord. Because God's word promises that everything works together for the good, not always for our good, but if we're the Lord's servants, if it's good for the Lord, it's good for us. And my wife and I chose to not trade what we know about God for what we didn't know about our circumstances. We just knew we haven't done anything to bring this on. It just was thrust upon us. The economy changed, and my supplementary income, which I was using to live in Southern California, all of a sudden that dried up. And then I could no longer just live on a pastor's salary. We couldn't adjust fast enough. And we held on to our faith in God's word, although it was hard. And yet in that season, other people chose to judge us. I know, I felt it. And I heard it directly, simply because they held to a false understanding about God. These are people even within the church. They believe that God exists to keep the faithful people out of trouble. So let me tell you, Jesus does not exist to keep you out of trouble. He delights to get into trouble with you, and He has promised never to leave or to forsake you, even though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And if your home is ever in foreclosure, let me tell you some insider information, and I hope it never is. But if your home is ever in foreclosure, you can't qualify for another mortgage for 3 years. And for 3 years, my family rented a home there in Southern California. But at the end of that 3 years, when I could buy another home again, an amazing thing happened. A pastor in Memphis, Tennessee called and offered me a job. You see, had the Lord answered our prayers 3 years earlier to save that home in California, and we fought for 2 years to save it. It was a 5-year ordeal. And had He answered our prayers, we'd still be anchored in California with that pre-collapse mortgage, because after the collapse of the market, our house was worth half on the market as it was. So God's like, oh, well, here's how I'm going to get him out of California. Let's just get rid of that house. If He'd answered our prayers, we would have been able to heed God's call to come to another state, which is where I live now. And sometimes God provides according to His long-term plan by not answering our short-term prayers. Let me say that again, because somebody needs to hear this. Sometimes God provides according to His long-term plan by not answering our short-term prayers. You see, hard times that believers suffer through, well, they may be unrelated to a personal sin, and they're more related to God's plan to use us to build His kingdom. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Groundworks Ministries operates entirely through financial donations from faithful people like yourself. And your giving to Groundworks Ministries helps to transform lives. Would you consider making a donation to Groundworks Ministries today? So we need your monthly support now more than ever. Donating is secure and it's easy at our website, groundworksministries.com. Another way to help is to tell people about Groundworks Ministries. Share these podcasts with your friends and family and on your social media. Of course, you can always direct folks to our website, groundworksministries.com.